Hello everyone, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, Ms. Rebecca Hoyt from Disability Rights California.
So now I'm going to shift and talk about pre-employment transition services from the DOR. Just if you could wave at the computer and let me know, are you familiar with pre-employment transition services? Or is this a new topic?
New topic.
Okay, great. So the Department of Rehabilitation is California's vocational rehabilitation program, and under the Workforce Innovations and Opportunities Act, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Under the Workforce Innovations and Opportunities Act, the DOR is now designated to provide a category of services called pre-employment transition services. In California, they refer to these as student services, so you may hear those words used interchangeably. WIOA also, focused on increasing the Department of Rehabilitation's role in transition. Doing that, it requires that state vocational rehabilitation programs spend 15% of their budget on student services. It also requires that they develop work opportunities and experiences for students with disabilities and increases their involvement in the transition planning process. So in California, we have what is called the blueprint, of which DRC was a stakeholder in. And it's an agreement between the CDE, the Department of Developmental Services, and the Department of Rehabilitation. And so each DOR district or school district county, or geographic area throughout the state, has what's called a local partnership agreement. And that is an agreement where these agencies are committing to collaborate together to increase outcomes for students with disabilities. And when I mean to say increase outcomes, I mean competitive integrated employment. The Department of Rehabilitation also has to attend individualized education plan meetings whenever invited. So if you're working at the school, you can let families know, you can reach out directly to the local DOR office and invite a DOR counselor to the meeting. They are conducting, meetings virtually using a lot of the same platforms as school districts are, in order to make their services congruent in a virtual format. And they also have to attend individualized program plan meetings for which is the regional center plan, for anyone who is eligible for Medi-Cal. So all of these provisions of WIOA are intended to support young people in not ending up in sub-minimum wage employment and to increase the diversity of career outcomes for students.
One quick question. Who decides if the DOR should be invited? Is that something that the parents have to ask for? Because sometimes I think parents don't know that they can ask for the DOR.
The parent can ask, and the school district can also invite the DOR on the parent's behalf. There is a student services page on the DOR website, and they have a link to an Excel chart that will show you who your DOR liaison is for each district, and it has contact information. So if you're not sure who the person at the DOR to contact, to invite to the meeting is, that contact information is available there. And I can forward that link to Dr. Kimm after the training so you guys all have access to it.
Okay. I didn't know that. Just I try to ask my students to initiate to reach out, but thank you.
Absolutely. And so student services or pre-employment transition services are available to any student with a disability between the ages of 16 and 21. In California, the department has issued some guidance that if a student turns 22 before they age out of special education, so sometimes if you have a birthday in May or June, there may be that slight gap, that they'll continue providing pre-ETS services. The student has to be enrolled in an educational program. So that could be high school, that could be community college, it could be a public, private, charter school, a vocational training program. It just has to be some type of approved educational program. And the student is either receiving special education services or is eligible or receiving accommodations under a Section 504 plan. So there are 5 different types of pre-employment transition services. The first is job exploration and counseling. The second is work-based learning experiences, which can include in-school, after-school opportunities, or experiences outside of the traditional school setting, like an internship. And these should be provided in integrated environments in the community to the maximum extent possible. The DOR can also provide counseling on opportunities for enrollment in comprehensive training programs, post-secondary educational programs, and other institutes of higher education. They can also provide workplace readiness training to develop social skills and independent living. I want to highlight the independent living at this stage because as we talk about vocational rehabilitation, the scope of service sort of narrows to really looking at what is vocationally necessary as opposed to independent living skills. So this is, sort of a unique age range where the DOR can provide those independent living services that may not be available from the department later on. They also provide instruction in self-advocacy, including person-centered planning. And this can include peer mentoring, which they actually have just started a program in California that they're piloting for a peer group, and working with people with disabilities in various competitive integrated employment settings. So some students may receive all 5 services. Some students may receive 1 or 2, but all of these services should be made available. And there's not an application or eligibility process for student services. There's a form, a 1-page form on the DOR website that a student can fill out to request services. And they are considered potentially eligible, which means that they don't have to go through assessments or eligibility determination process as long as they, are a student with a disability. And within the age range, they should be able to receive any of these 5 services. So I want to share with you some myths about pre-employment transition services. So first is that you have to ask for these services at an IEP meeting. So these services can be requested through the school, through the DOR website, by calling a DOR office. It's really meant to be a very easy process to ask for and become potentially eligible for services. Another myth is that only students who are quote unquote high functioning can participate in these services. So the aim under WIOA is really to serve students with significant disabilities to prevent referrals to sub-minimum wage employment. So the legislative focus is on serving people with the most significant disabilities. So significance of disability should not be a reason why someone is not receiving pre-employment transition services. Another misnomer is that clients who need job coaching or other general vocational services cannot access pre-ETS. So students who are, need personal services like a personal assistant or a job coach can receive pre-ETS. What the department would ask them to do is to apply for the regular scope of vocational services so they can provide the personal service through their VR program. And those VR services support the participation in pre-ETS. So does everybody get that? Are we on the same page? And then if a student obtains employment, they can continue to receive pre-ETS services. They may have, other employment goals. Most of us don't work in the first job that we had. We've had many first jobs, high school jobs, summer jobs, and then, maybe had a career goal in mind. So the department can assist someone in their career goal, even if the student has obtained employment in a work experience or a first job, summer job kind of position. And lastly, that students have to choose between either services from the school district or regional center or pre-employment transition services. So again, under WIOA, these agencies are supposed to coordinate services together. Students can receive services from all 3 agencies or in collaboration. Agencies even have some flexibility to split funding of different services. So for example, a student needs a personal assistant in order to participate in self-advocacy and work experience. So it could be that regional center funds the hours for the self-advocacy training and DOR funds the hours for the work experience. The only, caveat is that someone cannot receive the same service from two different agencies. They can't do duplication.
I have one question, Rebecca, because it seems like Department of Rehab is not really covering students with mild disability or learning disability, but with anybody, IEP can access the Department of Rehab services, right?
Yeah, so the Department of Rehabilitation doesn't have any specific disability criteria. The reason why I tend to focus on people with the more significant disabilities is because sometimes those are the folks who have a harder time accessing the services.
Right.
But again, if someone is eligible or receiving services through an IEP or a 504 plan, they can receive pre-employment transition services. So that could be a learning disability, it could be severe asthma, it could be, any type of disability.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Are there any other questions about pre-employment transition services?
I had a question about work-based learning experiences. Do you have any examples of specifically what that looks like?
Yes, absolutely. So many times the school district is the employer of record for a work-based learning experience. And so it could be something that happens on campus. There's a school district that has like a campus, like coffee shop, bookstore, where students have a work experience on the school campus itself. It can also be, where there's partnerships within the community. And so it could be at any business may say, we'd like to, participate in the work experience program. And so they typically are entry-level positions, but they should be available in a variety of fields. And, part of the planning process should really be about exploring the student's interest. So, we want to go beyond sort of what may have been in the past typically offered as work experience, which is like food, flowers, and filth, so janitorial, food prep, like there should be more opportunities than that. So here in Orange County, there's a graphic design company that has like a department that's more design oriented. So people are putting programs and print jobs together electronically. Within that company, there's also a printing department. So that job is, really different description than the other. And so within one business, there's many different roles. So there's a lot of room for creativity in finding opportunities.
Thank you.